Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
So, I am here with Joshua Cutchin, the returning Red Pill Junkie, and for the first time, Lobo from Project Archivist.
Hi.
And we've had Rosian on a couple of times, but you wouldn't have. This is the first time you've been able to join us, Lobo.
It is. I'm honored.
And we're happy to have you here.
That'll change.
And Red Pill, how are you doing? We haven't heard from you in 3-4 weeks now, maybe?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you know. I mean, say what you will about Mr. Trump, but, you know, laying bricks on the wall is good cardio.
Wow. That's great.
All right. And so,
that's great.
Joshua, I'm going to let you start this off because the first thing you wanted to talk about was yours. So go for it.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So, as everyone knows, I am something of a Sasquatch enthusiast. I think I'm probably the most Sasquatch savvy person in the regular roundtables in terms of how much I look into Sasquatch. And as you know, as part of that, I've been following a couple of different podcasts, and I'm taking this moment to sort of acknowledge what I see as a positive development in one of the more popular Sasquatch podcasts, and to sort of clear the air about some things that I've said. So there is a popular Sasquatch podcast that I've actually recommended to people called Sasquatch Chronicles, and I've been listening to it for I think about 2.5 years now, probably. I think. I enjoy the podcast quite a bit. Early on, I was a little bit turned off by some of the attitudes that were expressed towards some witnesses. It took a hard materialist stance toward the Sasquatch problem, as it were. And to the point that people who reported odd Fortean things in their sightings were labeled flute players. And so this turned me off from the podcast a little bit. I still listen because regardless of anything regarding the hosts, the guests that they had on were still witnesses, and I think that, you know, you can separate the hosts from what, you know, the guests calling in have to say. And so having that in my you know, being aware of that sort of stance of the show, even though I still listened, I was a little bit critical of the show, not only in person, but also on the air. I would say some things like, there's a podcast that says X, Y, Z. Because honestly, I think it's disingenuous to say that because someone saw an 8-foot-tall ape walk across the road that looked like a flesh and blood creature, well, that account is okay. But this other person who saw that 8-foot-tall creature in the woods, you know, disappear in front of their eyes and have glowing red eyes, they're the crazy ones. I think that's a bit disingenuous.
Yeah.
So I was sort of critical of the program for a while, and I'm sure some people probably put 2 and 2 together about what program I was talking about. But the reason that I sort of want to bring this up is to publicly say that I'm very pleased with the direction that that particular show has taken. And kudos to you, Wes, the host, if you're listening. He recently posted a behind-the-scenes podcast entry where he told a very compelling story of these 2 brothers who were on some property and actually had a medium come in. So the 2 brothers had actually called into the show and talked about how they've had these, you know, Sasquatch running around. They were trying to shoot them, and they were wanting to shoot them because they were causing a bunch of trouble. They were completely convinced that it was a large ape. And these 2 brothers invited a medium onto their property. I'm not really sure why, but the entire narrative of their experience turned, and that in turn helped the host sort of come to grips with some of these odder, more Fortean encounters. So on this most recent entry, which is a great episode of the show, they sort of came around to what they came around to start banging on the drum that I've been banging on for a while, which is, it seems to me as if the Sasquatch question has a lot of different answers. And I don't think any one group of people really is is entirely correct, but I don't think any one group of people is really wrong. The idea that they threw out was that there are possibly flesh and blood Sasquatch that can be subject to demonic possession of some sort, which is kind of a variation on what I've sort of been proposing as well about, there being a flesh and blood creature that sometimes has its imagery co-opted by something else, a lot like Mike Clelland in his research with the owls. But I just want to take this moment in case anybody's heard me say that, and I've had some private conversations with people, to say that I really admire it whenever people adapt in their views and when they become more understanding and when they become more open to things like this. I think that a change of heart like that deserves to be called out, and I think that moving forward in all of these sort of Fortean areas, that's probably a good place to start, is with this idea of, well, it's a little bit of this and it's a little bit of that. Similarly, I don't think any one person has the UFO answer. I think a lot of people are right about it to some degree. I think it's partially misidentification. It's partially unorthodox aircraft. It's partially extraterrestrials, maybe. That's probably the thing I'm least comfortable saying. It's probably partially psi effects. It's probably partially interdimensional. I think it's a multifaceted answer, and I just applaud people when they can accept something like that and move beyond the false dichotomy which is set up in a lot of these fields. And I just want to take a moment to say that I don't know if we can sort of build a conversation off of that, but those were sort of my feelings.
All right. Well, what are your guys' feelings on the whole paranormal Sasquatch type of thing? Lobo?
I don't know. Paranormal Sasquatch, I don't really have a dog in the fight in that manner. I can't say whether or not I can't discredit anybody as far as what they've seen. I wasn't there. I don't know what they've seen or what they claim to have seen. I do know that I believe that there may be the possibility of a bipedal hominid wandering around in remote areas of North America and many other places on the planet. But as far as a paranormal, I don't know. I can't say. I have a real hard time with the whole demonic spin on things.
Yeah, and I definitely empathize and sympathize with that. I guess what the real point that I was hoping to emphasize is I appreciate the fact when people who are in fringe subjects don't automatically write off other people's takes. Absolutely. If they seem genuine. I mean, obviously, if somebody's a deliberate huckster or somebody's telling a story that's absolutely bat nut insane, well, that's different. But I totally understand what you're saying too.
I won't ever discredit anybody for what they've seen. I've seen some pretty whacked out stuff in my time. I can't explain a lot of it. Some of it I can just barely explain, only by just sheer definition of what other people have reported. But I will not come out and tell someone, no, you didn't see that. You don't know what you're talking about. Because, again, I wasn't there. Yeah. And for me to do something like that, not only am I doing a disservice to the person that's trying to relay the information to me, I'm also doing a disservice to myself by not allowing myself to remain open.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And Miguel?
Hi. Well, you gentlemen obviously are aware of the metaphor, the scientific metaphor of the Schrödinger cat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's either alive or dead, and you don't find out until you finally get it out of the box. So to me, I've come to realize that to me, Sasquatch is my Schrödinger cryptid. To me, it's either a flesh and blood creature or a paranormal entity, and we won't know until we get it out of the forest. So
yeah.
I've come to the point where I feel like there's probably reason to accept a flesh and blood Sasquatch. It seems like it's probably very rare, but it's likely out there. on the other hand, it could be because it's in that liminal, we don't know if it really exists state, that sort of trickster element of our reality kind of kicks in and then starts emulating the things that we see.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it too. For both of you. That's what I liked about this particular entry that they had is that, and I recommend anybody listening to this particular entry in their show, because it's a pretty fascinating account of these guys, that these two brothers were related. But yeah, I don't think that we should write off the possibility of a flesh and blood Sasquatch, because there are plenty of encounters where Sasquatch sightings do have an encounter that is very much like you would expect to, encounter an ape. And there are certain physiological things that correspond highly to ape physiology. But at the same time, you have these odd, you have disappearing Sasquatch. You have Sasquatch with glowing red eyes. You have Sasquatch who supposedly are telepathic. You have the Oz effect, which we normally associate with UFOs, sometimes, in conjunction with Sasquatch sightings. And to me, it's just one of those things where it's a little bit too coincidental to have all these things happening, in addition to the fact that they seem to be so damn hard to find.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because the moment we say, flesh and blood animal, I mean, what are we trying to convey here? The idea that they are just, regular, boring, limited creatures. I mean, we humans are also flesh and blood, but does that mean that we humans are I don't know, devoid of a facet that we could very well, call magic? I mean, so I don't know, maybe it's the typical problem I have with in the quote unquote paranormal field. There's this will to try to divide things either off or, but in my experience, most of the time in the paranormal field, things are, both and,
Yes.
So maybe Sasquatch is both flesh and blood and paranormal at the same time, in a manner that we simply cannot explain at the moment because we just don't understand it.
Well, it's part of the reason that I love your Schrodinger's cryptid statement. That's a great way to put it.
All right. So one of the things I was thinking of doing for this show, just I don't know, it struck me a couple of days ago. I wanted to talk about the concept of fear and why we're afraid of certain things. Like, why do some things creep us out more than other things? I mean, there are perfectly rational reasons to be afraid of certain things. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. I mean, there's survival instincts and stuff like that. But like, for instance, why does a ghost scare us? Especially if the ghost isn't actually doing anything frightening.
Yeah, it's subjective.
True, but I mean, it's not like the ghost is coming up and saying, boo. Someone sees just a person walk through a corridor. And they shouldn't be there. I mean, why does that Why does that send a fear response?
If you want to look at that, if you want to look at the fact that we'll take the paranormal because you brought it up. I think the reason why people are initially frightened by an apparition would be the fact that, one, it's something that you don't see normally in your everyday walkabout life. Two, for the most part, in this area of the world, the concept of death is looked at as there has to be another side. And then you have the idea of this shouldn't be here because we are told that you go one of three places. You either go to heaven, hell, or you exist in purgatory. So for this disembodied creature to be wandering around in front of us, that automatically sends off buzzers and alarms to the theological part of our upbringing, of our mind.
Existential dread, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to describe it, because I know how I was raised as a child. I was told that there is no heaven, there is no hell. You lay in the ground, and then at some point after this big war, if you died, you will be brought back to life and you live on Earth, which is the basic idea of what the Jehovah's Witnesses believe. Now, I thought that was bunk from the word go. That's probably one of the reasons why I was excommunicated from the religion, among other things. But my father, when he was young, he was a Catholic. So he saw a lot of strange things. The house that he lived in was, for lack of a better term, was haunted. And he saw things growing up. And when he got older and he was no longer a Catholic and had joined the Jehovah's Witness faith, all of those things that he saw as a child and as a young adult, even, his adolescence growing up, he wrote them all off as he was seeing things, because this can't exist. But I'll tell you what, if that same thing popped up in front of him now, he'd be frightened. I know he would, because he's been with me at times in the past where strange things have happened, and he turns white as a sheet. And for a darker-skinned Puerto Rican to turn white as sheet, he's scared. So the idea, there's a lot that goes into what causes fear. Like, I'm not particularly frightened of anything supernatural or anything paranormal for a lot of different reasons now. But there are things that freak me out. Like, flying insects scare the hell out of me. It's a phobia. That's a whole different bracket of fear.
Right. Yeah, I mean, phobias are more of a... It's not quite the same thing. Like, when we look at accounts of black-eyed children, people are far more freaked out by black-eyed children than they would be, say, a black-eyed adult.
Yeah, because children aren't supposed to be dead behind the eyes. That's why. They're supposed to come from a place of purity, of being untouched, being pure, being... Children are always looked at, well, I don't want to say always looked at because that's a blanket statement, but they're usually looked at closer to God, closer to a pure state of things. I personally am not terrified of the concept of black-eyed children. I've told Tim, I've told Roe, I've told Greg Bishop, I bring them, have them come to my door. I want to see one. I've never seen one before. I have 3 children. It's going to take a hell of a lot to scare me.
And I do think sometimes, though, with the people who actually encounter some of this stuff, there's a fear reaction that's not mental. It might be saying in the environment. There's the one graveyard I've been in many times where things have happened. There's one spot where you can feel this sense of oppression, like something doesn't want you there. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's very, very strong. And it sets you on edge. It sets off that fear response, even though there's nothing actually happening at the time. So it could be that when these black-eyed children appear, they're emanating something that's setting off, some kind of ELF frequency or something that's setting off your fear receptors.
Interesting. Yeah. Usually have a very visceral response from people.
Something that we mentioned too early before we started recording was this idea that, we are supposed to have, or you could argue we do have, emotions ingrained in us to protect children, to think fondly of children, to want to, to nurture children. And when those are turned on their head by something frightening about a child, it's almost as if we seem more vulnerable because we are trying to be open. We're trying to open up our compassion to them, and that is being used as an opening in our armor to actually attack us.
Yeah, also because the natural order of things are upended. That which is supposed to inspire a sense of protection suddenly becomes frightening, and threatening to our existence. And coming to the idea of the black-eyed children, what I've heard on numerous accounts is this idea that the people who encounter them, they feel that, their words are that they feel that their soul is being threatened, so this is taking the concept of self-preservation to an extreme that seems to go beyond the physical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to circle back around before we leave the ghost thing, like I think part of it are the things that Lobo mentioned too, but I think also there's a pretty mundane component as well. I mean, I know that my wife is in the other room. She could walk in here right now and scare the bejesus out of me just by tapping me on the shoulder at the right moment. So I mean, there's something about like if you're not something about just something being unexpected that'll frighten you too, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you have that unexpected component, when you have that unexpected component coupled with the fact that this shouldn't exist, I think that sort of amplifies it.
Fair enough. I have any of you watched? What's it called? I know the subtitle is Candle Cove. It's Channel
Zero. No,
I
I have not.
I would definitely recommend it. It's basically a short series. It's 6 episodes on Sci-Fi, I believe, and it's based off stories from creepypasta.
Yeah, and the original creepypasta story is actually pretty darn good. It's got a nice little. The format is really cool because it's all told through forum postings. So it's sort of like sort of like the way Dracula was told in correspondence. And it's a really cool way to have told the story, and I recommend anybody looking up the original short story because it's great. But I've heard good things about the adaptation as well.
Well, the thing about it is, in this adaptation, you have these kids who are being sort of brainwashed, and they're attacking and killing people who normally would be able to overpower them. But what do you do when a small child attacks you, even with deadly force? Our instincts are not to attack a child.
You kill it. You kill it with fire.
Okay, other than Lobo, most people... But I mean,
like I said, I have 3 children. You kill it with fire.
Depends on how old they are. If they're like middle school age or older, you just drop kick them,
It's true.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're being overpowered by a child, hit the gym.
Well, it was, but so what they have is knives and stuff in the show, and they're attacking various adults, and usually kind of sneakily, like the adults don't realize there's something wrong, and suddenly they're surrounded by kids with knives and other sharp objects.
So it's Children of the Corn meets Gage.
Meets what?
Gage from Pet Sematary.
Oh. I definitely.
That's terrifying.
It's definitely worth a watch for anyone who hasn't seen it. It's done very well, and it definitely has a massive creep factor, and it's very original.
Cool.
Mentioning Children of the Corn, this brings back to me the idea of how adults feel so threatened with children who are gifted with a high IQ. Parents who don't really know how to deal with their child, if they happen to be, smarter than them, and it is something quite upsetting, I guess, to find a child that deep down that he's smarter than you, that he is probably aware of things that you don't even comprehend, and that goes back to the idea, of the upsetting of the natural order of things. Adults should be, on a regular basis smarter than children, but you find a child that is smarter than you, or is that in somehow more threatening than you. That's obviously incredibly creepy. That's probably the appeal of the black-eyed children, mythos.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you get kids that are that smart, they don't have the life experience to back up that intelligence, and it tends to really cause some issues.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know they're smart, but, without that life experience to kind of temper it, they just think, I can do whatever I want. I know what I'm doing. I'm smart.
Mm-hmm. They get cocky.
Yeah. And understandably.
A cocky kid is never a good thing.
Well, and also they might not have a defined or a refined moral compass.
True. Oh, they definitely don't have a moral compass at all. Their brain hasn't developed far enough along the lines for them to have that.
Yeah.
So think of maybe some kind of non-human intelligence that see humans being that cocky, smart child, and they see it as a threat. Yeah. And maybe that's why they're so interested in us.
Watch The Arrivals in theater. Watch The Arrival in theaters now.
I can't wait to watch that.
No, I can't either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Looks so good.
definitely looks like one of the highlight movies of this year.
I've been hearing it's one of the best sci-fi movies of the decade.
Yeah, and Hornaday was on the Tony Kornheiser show today, and she was pumping it, and she's not really a big sci-fi fan.
Yeah, my favorite movie site tends to be pretty cynical, and they're gushing over it. So either that means it's an art flick or it's actually really good. So we'll see.
Well, you figure that you got that and the new Star Wars movie both coming out in a short period of time.
Yeah,
Ooh,
right.
yeah.
I just wish Stranger Things would get up and start going again.
They did start casting the new season and putting it together.
I can't wait for that.
Oh, great.
So, so the other aspect of fear, like I was saying, with the possible elf waves. I mean, I know there's been research done that certain frequencies bring out a fear reaction in us.
Yeah,
And
was it below 5 hertz?
something like that? Yeah. And the question would be why? How is that a survival mechanism?
Good question.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the larger animals, elephants, use the lower frequencies. I know that bull elephants will use frequencies as low as, is it 5? I think it's 5 kilohertz to be able to transfer information back and forth between other elephants. If you were caught in between that as a still developing primate, you'd probably know real quick that after watching, Throg get smashed by this great big thing tumbling through, right after you heard that noise, you'd probably associate those low frequencies to fear.
Well, that, is a completely different direction than I thought you were going in, Lobo, because you were saying that, when you're talking about elephants, I thought you were going to go into how elephants tend to move to higher ground whenever they detect a tsunami. So maybe there's some sort of part of ourselves that can use these sort of intuitive reactions to detect changes in our environment that we've just fallen out of touch with.
Yeah, we've fallen out of touch with a lot of stuff.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Definitely.
And taking it back to Bigfoot there, I know I had at least one person on the show who had a Bigfoot encounter. It turned into a whole hour and a half show with him. And one of the things he said is he sat in his tent and just had this overwhelming sense of fear. And then he could hear them outside of him or outside of the tent and stuff. But he said the fear thing seemed unconnected to the fact that he could hear someone walking outside of his tent. It was just something that really, it's like they were like vibrating energy at him almost.
Yeah, you know what? That was brought up as a theory as to what happened at Dyatlov Pass as well.
Well, yeah, the subsonic, yes. And I don't know how valid that is, but it's definitely worth a look.
Sure, why not?
I mean, that thing's just a big open mystery, really. And being from the Soviet Union, it's so hard to know. We think our government's secretive. How much of what we're looking at from that story is actually true?
I'm gonna say probably 75% of it's not.
Yeah.
So, at least the official record.
And how do
they close that up pretty well.
And how do you piece together the parts that are true and make any sense out of them?
True. I mean, it's so far gone at this point, unless somebody comes forward with other information.
Sure. I was trying to catch up with the Mysterious Universe podcast list, and I was listening to this story that apparently broke a few months ago about this family of well-to-do farmers that suddenly went to go on a weird, crazy-ass road trip. The whole family, even the children who were adults. And it was crazy because they were all, in some kind of trance, and the father is apparently still missing, and there apparently is no answers of why they reacted that way. Apparently, they left their home in a rush. They left their cell phones, their wallets. It was almost on an self-preservation instinct. Huh. So, we don't have to look to the Dyatlov Pass incident, to find incidents in which, people react in a very strange manner.
Fair enough. And you know, people like to connect it to the people in you know, disappearances in parks and stuff like that. And I mean, maybe it is somehow connected. I think the worst part about that is we can't really trust the information because of the source.
Of course.
They could have, you know, it could have been a military mistake where they screwed up and went, we'll just make this look so weird nobody will know what to make of it.
Yeah, but you know what? I have a hard time with that
Why?
explanation. It's Russia. They don't need to explain to anybody.
Yeah, you know, I've
like,
thought of that
literally.
before.
You know,
Good point. Good
I mean,
point.
they've poisoned people. They've given people like they make people disappear. I mean, like literally disappear. If in my mind, granted, which is twisted most days, in my mind, if they were going to try and cover it up, anybody that was involved in the initial investigation would have been made go bye-bye.
Yeah.
You know, none of the information would have been brought forward at all.
They would have just been missing people.
Yep.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I guess we
just so much about it. It's just so weird.
We think of things in the context of the West, where although yes, the government lies to us and twists things and spins things, they pretend to have some accountability to us. And the Soviet Union doesn't.
They don't need to.
Right.
I mean, they have Siberia. They have Mongolia. They have. I mean, come on.
Oh, you want answers? Well, here's your answer.
Yeah, we have a trip you need to go on. You're never going to be seen again.
You have next 2 decades to think of answers to the question.
Yeah, that's great.
And there are definitely, I mean, Steph Young covers some really bizarre disappearances. You've had her on Project Archivist, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay,
Not
I know you were talking about
have
having her on.
She has some fascinating research.
And some of them are just, I mean, the Outlaw Pass is weird, but some of the ones she's covered are even weirder than that. You know?
Yeah.
And you just
the stuff that you guys covered, well, when she was on, that there was some stuff there that made me pause.
and you get such anomalous phenomenon in some of these areas that it just... To me, it suggests that we just don't really know much about the world we live in, as much as we like to pretend we're safe and we understand it.
Yeah, not only that, but that also the realization that human beings are so easy to manipulate, even people with a very high level of intelligence.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, when we're dealing with perception, we're very limited in what we actually perceive, but we assume that we perceive everything that's there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Not even close.
It reminded me of a great quote that Gordon White had on his last episode of Rune Soup, which was, "We live in a magical world, but not all of us are magicians." And it's a lot like we all have teeth, but only some of us are dentists. So, whether or not you're a dentist or not, you still have to use your teeth, and your teeth are still a part of your life. You're embedded in this. It's part of your reality.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way of putting it. So, I mean, the fear thing also, of course, goes down to we don't understand something, so we're afraid of it. It doesn't fit into our paradigm, so we're afraid of it.
As a whole, I would agree with that.
And it's not everyone. You know, as you said, Lobo, paranormal stuff doesn't tend to scare you. It doesn't tend to scare me very often. There's been a couple times where it sent chills down my spine.
Oh, yeah, the chills are there, but I think that's a visceral response. I run towards it 99% of the time.
Exactly,
The other 1% of the time, I'm asleep.
I realize that the experiences that have always freaked me out the most are more related to things like sleep paralysis, like where I'm in that altered state.
Had that before.
something happens, like a one sleep paralysis thing. I thought I had woken up, and as I'm laying there, a hand reaches up and grabs my leg through the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And my reaction was to be really freaked out. Now, I don't think something like that would happen in real life, but if it did, I don't know that I would be as freaked out. It's that altered state where you're not quite the same you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or you're more of you.
Good question.
Yeah. Very good point. But I realized those are the things that freak me out more, is in those type of states. But maybe also because they have the dream imagery where you don't have so much control. You realize what's happening is saying that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those in my lifetime that are just, one of them I'm thinking of right now, and I got the Ghiblies just freaking thinking about it, because it was completely out of left field, and it just should not have happened.
Well, do tell.
I talked about it before, not here, of course, this is the first time, but it happened on 2 different occasions, and it was both the same, for lack of a better term, creature. I was laying in bed, and this was, my skin's crawling already. It takes a lot for that to happen. But I was laying in bed. This is before children. We were in another house that we were renting, and it was a 2-floor house. And it was in the dream, and I couldn't move, and it like it seemed like a scene out of like Scooby-Doo. Like it was misty, and the colors were vibrant, but it was moonlight, and I couldn't move in the dream. And this thing that, for lack of a better term, looked like a chick, like a baby, like a bird, not like but not a bird. It was a humanoid bird, and it was gray, and it had very large eyes. It still had a beak, but it was humanoid in form, covered in feathers. They were downy feathers, and like not completely simian feet, but they weren't bird feet either. And this thing just looked at me, and it made this god-awful noise, like almost a scream. And at that point, and I couldn't move, and I woke up, and that thing was in my bedroom. And I'm like, okay, it's the dream. I'm in the middle of a dream, and it was staring at me in the dream and in life. And it was there because I couldn't see the fish tank that was on the other side of it. So it was, at some point, it was there. It was there. And it turned, and it ran out across the front of the bed, out the door, down the stairs, and I'm like, okay, good. It was just a dream. And then I heard the front door slam. Okay, so I got up, and I'm like, okay, I'm following this thing. Come hell or high water, I'm following this thing. So I went downstairs, and the front door was locked and closed. What I heard was the screen door open and close. So whatever it was passed through the door but couldn't go through the aluminum screen door. And that was the slam. So when I opened up the door, I'm like, okay, the wind caught the door, and that screen door was fastened tight, and it wasn't flapping. So I went back to bed. I was like, forget this. I'm going back to bed. I mean, I went out into the yard. I was like, I gotta see. I went out in the yard. It was a bright full moon. It was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. So I looked around. It wasn't nowhere to be seen. I didn't hear any receding footsteps. So I went back in the house. I went back to bed. Fast forward, I don't know, maybe a year. And I was sitting at work, and I worked the graveyard shift at my shop. And for whatever reason, I heard the door. There's a fire door that never gets open. You can't open it from the outside stairway. It's locked from our inside. And I heard that open and close, and I was like, oh, Jimmy's here, one of the guys or Hody, I thought it was either Jimmy or Hody, the maintenance guys and one of the guys that owns the building. Sometimes they come through there, but I usually hear them walk through part of the other building first. So I got up and I went to go look, and there's that thing standing at not more than 25 feet from me. It saw me and it took off. And it took off and it went through a pass-through, and then it went into the back room. So I'm like, okay, game on. I got my Magnum. Whatever it is dying. I ran after it. I went into that room not thinking, and that back room has no entrance, no egress. The only way out of that room is through a 3-inch pipe that goes up through the ceiling and doesn't go anywhere.
Huh.
It wasn't even in that room when I got there. And I'm talking from me unholstering my shoulder holster to get to that point was no more than a second, because I was hot after the thing. But when I saw it that second time, I wasn't as frightened of it. I'm like, nope, you're on my turf now.
I wonder if things can bleed from the imaginal, not imaginary, but the imaginal realm into the realm of reality, and if maybe sometimes we don't facilitate that by entering the imaginal realm in sleep. That sort of sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but I hope
No, not at all.
my thought process is taken.
The veil between the two is very thin.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's these stories of Alan Moore, the famous comic book writer, whom on several occasions he met or he saw one of his characters, John Constantine.
Oh, yeah.
In real life.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, the character came near him, and whispered something, saying, I'll tell you the secret of magic, I don't remember the other part, like any motherfucker can do it, something like that. Oh, I was the one who cursed now. Sorry, Lobo. I bet
How about that, huh? It wasn't me this time.
That's all right. That's all right. But yeah, I think whatchamacallit covered that in what's his name? That just wrote the book with Strieber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey
Kripal.
Yeah. Which book was it? Was that in the Mystics book?
Mutants and Mystics? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a creepy story.
That's just that's one that still, when I tell it, it still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I've had a whole bunch of stuff that I just can't explain that involves something that would be considered flesh and blood, but just isn't. It can't. The way it behaves, it can't be. At some point, it may be, but as it transfers through, I don't know. So that's why to go back around in full circle, I can't say that the people that are seeing Bigfoot aren't seeing something that's not a tulpa or something that's just beyond the veil of our reality or our waking reality.
Right.
So I can't say that it's not because of the situations that I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, the places where it's being seen, there's a lot of power in the Great Woods. There's a lot of power there. So
yeah,
it could just be a touchstone for our own imagination, our own wishes, our the other side of the primal nature of what we are.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point.
Can I ask you something, Lobo? I mean,
absolutely.
Emulating, the type of research that our friend Mike Leland does, in the paranormal field.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to ask you, what was your state of mind when you had these disturbing episodes? Were you under a lot of stress in your life personally when you had these experiences? Were you going through some kind of personal, turmoil of some kind?
When I first saw it, no, I didn't have a care in the world. There were no children. There was no nothing. I misspoke when I said it was months. It was years later, actually. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, night shift. I didn't start night shift until my second child was born. She's 9. So, yeah, we're talking all of, it had to be 10 years or better between seeing it.
Now, you got.
But no,
So it kind of started as dream imagery and then turned into something you saw in physical waking life. And you got to wonder if you were out in the woods and somehow was exposed to the exact same energy, would you have seen Bigfoot?
It's a good possibility. I've seen my guide before out in the woods.
Like a spirit guide?
Yep.
Okay.
Have you seen it anywhere other than the woods?
Oh my God, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I spoke to Linda Godfrey about it. So, because it bears a striking resemblance to what people are seeing with her research.
Which is what?
And I've been Dogman.
Oh, really?
Oh, jeez. Lobo. Right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
I've had a wolf in my life since I was very small. And that did happen under distress. So before that, it was a toucan that would come and visit me.
Did he say follow your nose? I'm sorry, I had to.
No, I never did. He spoke like any one of you people. And when I tried to tell my mother about it, she told me I was crazy. And then after my grandfather killed himself, they switched positions. It went from the toucan to the wolf.
Interesting.
Or not really a wolf. I mean, it's not really a wolf. Wolves aren't 8-9 feet tall. That just doesn't happen.
Right.
Oh. Prince Mononoke.
So what did Linda think about the similarity to the Dogman?
We had quite a nice conversation about it. The description that I gave her, I had originally heard her speaking on Erie radio forever ago. And I called in after hearing her and told the guys that were running Erie Radio about it, and they were supposed to get me in contact with her, and that just never materialized. So when I spoke to her about it, she's like, "Oh, I remember you. I remember listening to the show when you called in." I'm like, "Yeah, I wish I had talked to you back then." But the description, other than the experiences that are spoken of, or the sightings that are spoken of the Dogman, for lack of a better term, there's never any real interaction with humans.
Really?
Yeah, there's like they don't talk to you. There's none of that.
It's like grimacing is all you get, really.
Pretty much, yeah. What I've dealt with since I was 4 or 5. Let me think. The bird was before. So before the bird, 9 years old, from the age of 9 to I'm 41. Although I haven't seen it in maybe 5 years now.
So,
and I've been off drugs and alcohol for 21. So there's that.
Has your life become more routine since then? Since the last time you saw it?
The last time I saw it was when my wife's grandfather passed. And my life has gotten different from then. I was working night shift. I was watching children during the day. Now I work during the day and watch children, and I'm still not around humans very often, other than small ones. Thus, the black-eyed children thing doesn't frighten me because I'm always around kids. So, I don't know. I want to say routine. I mean, it tends to show up when I need it to, for guidance.
Okay. Interesting.
And I'm not the only one who's seen it. That's what made it even more terrifying at one point. because I went through a small portion of my life thinking I was completely insane.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And I was with my wife, and we had been dating for maybe 3 months, and we were parked outside of my parents' house, and I was in the driver's seat, and she was in the passenger seat, and we'd been talking. It was probably 11 o'clock at night, maybe 12 o'clock, and her face goes blank, and she looks past my head to the corner of my parents' house and then back at me and goes, "What's with the big wolf?" And I just looked back and I looked at it in the corner of the house, and I'm like, "You can see that too?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's been wandering around for quite a while. I didn't expect to see it at your parents' house." I'm like, "Oh, all right. So I'm not crazy, or you're just as crazy as I am."
You're on the same crazy wavelength.
Yeah.
Well, and even more interesting to me is there's been a recent series of call-ins to Mysterious Universe about people at a young age seeing
Wolves.
large wolves outside their window. Yeah,
Rojan
Yeah.
has as well.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, what has always fascinated me about all these accounts that Linda Godfrey investigates is the idea that these entities seem so surprised that the witnesses can see them, you know, almost as if they are accustomed to not be perceived by the human inhabitants of these worlds, you know, and then all of a sudden, for some reason or other that we just cannot understand, you know, the witness can perceive these entities. It almost hints to the idea that we inhabit a world that is kind of like an onion, you know. There's layers upon layers of different, I don't know, states of consciousness, of states of being, and we just, you know, humans perceive just a very narrow bit of it on a normal basis.
And it's not even that we just perceive a narrow bit. It's that the narrow bit we do perceive is also kind of just filtered down by our brain. We're not seeing everything we perceive. We're seeing everything our brain thinks that we should perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, you talk to if anybody has ever spent time with a child, I mean, like a small child, not like, I want to say that the magic age is between 3 and 5. If you sit down and talk to a child, their reality is what they see.
Yeah.
It's not until we're told we're not supposed to see these things that they go away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a breath of fresh air. Like, one of my nephews right now is dealing with something that is freaking out his parents. And the first person they call is me. And I told him, look, if you need help with it, I'll help you. I'll sit with him. We'll figure out what's going on. But you need to ask him. You need to ask him if Uncle Boo can see them too.
Mm-hmm.
If he tells you that he can see them too, then we can move forward. If he says not, then chances are it may be an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And when he sat down with them and said, does Uncle Boo see this? It was answered in the affirmative. And I'm like, okay, well, then we can work with this.
But you haven't done anything yet.
I went and I held him for a little while, and we were talking. Now, he's 2.
Mm-hmm.
So his vocabulary isn't the greatest.
Sure.
But I can understand enough of what he's saying and get the idea of what he's trying to convey. And since that time, I brought him into the area where he was talking about this particular individual or character or whatever it was. And since I've brought him to that area, he doesn't seem to be having as much issue with the area. So I don't know if he feels safer that someone else is dealing with it with him, or he's just come to grips with the fact that this is going to be something that's around.
Yeah. And the thing too with kids, as we've said many times, when kids remember past lives, there's no filter there. They don't, they're not thinking, well, I shouldn't remember this. That's nonsense. They say, no, this is what happened. Okay, now I'm going to go play.
Yep. They're very matter of fact about it.
Sure. I mean, the world that children inhabit is full of magic. Everything is magical. When you're a child, because it's the first time you experience it, and it's only when you grow up that you, I don't know, grow cynical, and that the wonder is lost because it becomes, I don't know, routinary, and I don't know, maybe that is the reason why children, are also able to perceive things that we adults maybe, just don't. It's not in our scope or in our radar anymore.
Well, we've been told it's not there.
Yeah.
Over and over again, Your imaginary friends are not real.
No, it's not only that. It's because we adults, we just don't pay attention. I mean, let me tell you something that happened to me last week. I was driving, I was commuting to work, and I tend to drive very early in the morning. It's like around 7 a.m. And I was, it was a very clear day. Very very beautiful morning. And the sun was just coming up, rising up, and I just looked to my left, to one of a very characteristic, very staple buildings in Mexico City, the World Trade Center. And I saw the World Trade Center being lighted beautifully by the morning sun. But at the left of the sun, I saw this streak of light, that I considered it was some kind of like meteor or bolide, that was like almost like falling into the city. I was like, oh my God, what is this? Trying to look it, without, crashing my car, and I was just the only one there. Obviously, I couldn't like stop because it's a speed highway. And it wouldn't have made that much sense, because if you take a picture with your cell phone, it's not like the best image you can get. But the thing that struck me the most is that I was trying to find that day and the next day if there was some kind of like notice of news of other people seeing this thing, in the city.
Right.
And there was no other mention of it in the news. I mean, a city of 20 million people, and apparently I was the only one who saw this thing.
Yeah, you think Jaime would be all over that,
Yeah, but that tells you something about, we people don't pay attention. It almost seems like only children and weirdos are only, realizing what's going on in the world.
Sometimes I wonder if psychedelics and meditation aren't just deprogramming us,
Exactly,
if they aren't just
exactly.
defragging the hard drive.
Yeah.
Well, look
Maybe
at
like ayahuasca? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at the guy that Greg Bishop had on that saw the thing sitting by the highway, just sitting there, and that they didn't know if anyone else saw it, despite the fact that it was in plain view.
Oh, the motionless airplane.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just hovering in the sky. Yeah, it's a perfect example.
I mean, people are so focused on what they're doing and where they're supposed to be or whatever's occupying their mind that they don't actually look around them. Not in an open enough a way to pick up some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, our world is so concentrated on being busy at all times.
Because you have to be.
Well, that's what I mean. You're not given a break.
Yeah, well, you know what I find it when we slow ourselves down and we actually pay attention to our surroundings, many things open up.
Mm-hmm.
Many things open up. Some frightening.
And that brings us back to fear. And I think as kids, we're less afraid of things a lot of times. We have to almost be taught to be afraid of some of this stuff.
True.
I heard a poltergeist.
Yeah. I knocked over an empty Dr. Pepper bottle. Sorry about that.
There was something else I was going to say about fear, but the Dr. Pepper bottle has now distracted it out of me. I blame you, Josh.
No, dude. No, it was a poltergeist. Woo.
But it was spawned from you.
Funny,
So-
he doesn't look like a pre-adolescent female.
What? So let's do this. Let's go around. What kind of things do scare you guys?
I was. It's no small secret that I was terrified of the abduction scenario.
Really?
And-
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Like literally, like to the point where I remember one time, whatever was up with this was not too long ago. It was like back in like around 2011. Whatever was going on with the positioning of the Earth and what was happening in the sky. For some reason, out one window, I could see Venus really well, and I freaked out. I was convinced that this light was just waiting to take me that night. Mm-hmm. And then like that was the same night that like my cell phone was dying and it made a beep that I'd never heard before, and I was convinced that there was some sort. I was super paranoid. I was terrified, and it's kind of funny. Getting into all this was almost like a sort of a form of therapy for me to sort of get over the fear of that scenario. I for whatever reason, the idea that consciousness plays a role in all this makes me have a little bit more comfort. I guess because it gives me a toehold into controlling the situation. And some people would hear me say that and be like, "Oh, you must be an abductee." But like, I don't care. Like, again, it's that thing of just something being unexpected, or like an intruder. Like that was the big thing. Like I'd still have the same feeling if heck, I love Miguel with all my heart. If Miguel showed up at the end of my bed, I'd probably hit him with a baseball bat in the middle of the night tonight, just because it's a place of vulnerability. It's something that you're not expecting. So I mean, like, yeah,
Exactly,
hands down, the abduction scenario frightened me. But just the home intruder idea is just it's sort of the home intruder while sleeping idea is something that still gets me to this day.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
understandable.
that's home intruders. No, not here.
Yeah.
What about you, Lobo? What really freaks you out?
Oh, like anything that freaks me out, or like
yeah,
are we
what-
talking
what-
about particular parameters?
No, what gets that fear response from you?
Things that fly at me.
Anything that flies at you?
No, which is strange. Like, pigeons, wrens, bees, moths, but ravens don't bother me. Buzzards, crows, bats, none of that stuff bothers me. But like bees, flies, like you want to see a brother hit the ground quick. That the hackles go up, eyes dilate, like. And I don't understand why either. That's the thing that bugs me the most.
You said bees?
Yeah, dude, like bees. Like I'm allergic to bees. I have an EpiPen with me. Well,
see,
it's wasps. But no, but it's not just that. The EpiPen is relatively recent. This has been going on for quite a while.
No, same thing with wasps.
Wasps, I'm allergic to. Bumblebees don't bother me.
But the fear. So it's just honeybees or
Honeybees don't bother me. Wasps bother me.
Oh, okay.
wasps? Okay.
But it's like weird stuff bothers me. Like it's not like a moth, man. When was the last time a moth bit anybody?
Yeah, that's odd.
You know?
Well, unless you're a sweater, you know.
Exactly.
I think it has to do with the movement. You know, the movement of insects is very, very strange, almost alien. You know, when compared to the movement of mammals or bigger animals. So maybe that is the kind of thing that triggers something.
Yeah, but why don't
in
praying
your...
mantis bother me then?
Mm-hmm. Well,
they're slow.
Okay. June bugs.
Again, not quite the same behavioral movements.
It's just weird stuff though. You know, like weird stuff.
I have a friend who's actually afraid of moths, and I was really amused by this, and talked to him about like why moths, why? But apparently he had a bat infestation at one point, And it really freaked him out, and the bats would fly at his head, and he's like, the moths move like the bats move.
That makes
See,
sense.
but bats don't bother me, though.
Yeah. Well,
Like, I've had bats swoop at me, and they don't, it's whatever, dude. If you're going to bite me, bite me. Just get it over with.
and most bats aren't going to bite you.
True. But still, I'm a rather rational thinker. And this is the part that bugs me the most, because it's just a completely irrational thing. Like, I've taken steps in my life to try and break it. Like, parakeets used to terrify me. So I have parakeets. Like, anything, I'm telling you, things that fly. Like, you want to talk about, like, visceral response. It's no joke. It's like this is coming at me, and I get the same reaction. This is going to sound terrible. I worked at a pet store, and I told them, do not put me in the bird room. I'll work with the reptiles, I'll work with the fish, I'll work with literally everything. Do not put me in the bird room. Do you know how many parakeets I had to pay for when I worked there? I mean seriously, like, out of the air, swatted to the ground, and stomped like it was a demon. It's just, and so when I've tried to use rational thought, and I've tried to use immersive therapy, so I got birds. Now I'm cool with parakeets. I have 2 of them. One passed away on its own. I didn't kill it. like I'll take Snow out of the cage, and he'll sit on my shoulder, or I'll play with him, and I'll put him back. And I'm fine with parakeets now. I'll go outside and a crow will come flying through the yard, or like the turkey vultures around the yard. No problem. But then like a robin will come whipping through the yard, and I'm done. I'm like, forget it. Oh, hair's up. I'm looking to kill something.
So you're afraid of the harmless ones is what it comes down to.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense, man.
That one's not going to hurt me. Run.
Well, that's the thing. And just recently, within the last week, we had a moth come in the house. I'm like, I'm going to catch it. I caught it, and I brought it outside, and I let it go, and I was fine. But it's just, I can't explain it, and it bugs the crap out of me that I can't explain it. Like, I'm like, oh, did something happen to me when I was younger? No, this is relatively new, within the last 15 years. Like, when I was using, I got clean in 95. I was not afraid of anything when I got clean. All of a sudden, I'm clean, and I'm afraid of stuff that I was never afraid of before. Why? Did something happen to me by one of these harmless creatures when I was messed up and my subconscious remembers it? And it's just screwing with me like, ha, remember me?
Maybe it was something subconscious that happened to you.
Maybe. I mean, I spent a lot of days in blackout mode, trust me.
Oh, okay. So to be fair, I have something similar to that. Like, I can, in terms of home pests, like I can handle any sort of insect. I cannot handle rodents at all because, generally speaking, I can't kill them with a Kleenex.
Really?
Which is a big prerequisite for me.
You're not trying hard enough, man.
Well, I was actually in an apartment complex not too long ago where a girl, my next door neighbor, woke up in the middle of the night and there was a rat on her pillow that had bitten her nose. Bam.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I can't imagine waking up to that. Again, maybe it's just a variation on the bedroom intruder thing, right? But that just, something about rodents just sets me off. I can't handle that.
But again, that is a rational fear that a rodent could be in your bed and bite you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Ain't a whole lot of moths coming drinking your blood, are they?
No. Miguel, what's your thing? What's your thing, buddy?
Oh my God! I mean, where do I start? It will be easier to list the things that don't scare me. I mean, I almost feel that my cowardice is the force, the driving force of my life. I mean, yeah, sure, I share Joshua's fear of the abduction scenario. I've suffered numerous episodes of sleep paralysis. They always terrify me. I guess it's the it's the experience of loss of control. I mean, you lose
Mm.
basically control of the most your most precious possession, which is your own body. You lose possession of your body. You're no longer a human being. You are. I don't know what you are. You're just a helpless consciousness. And what else? I mean, obviously, I live in a developing country where there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of crime. So obviously that scares me. I've been mocked on several occasions. And the possibility of being assaulted or even being killed is something very real that I have to live on a daily basis. And recent developments obviously make me afraid of the future. Uncertainty. Yeah, probably the other thing that triggers fear in most humans, probably adults, right? Because children are careless. Children live in the eternal now. I mean, a kind of some kind of a time experience in which a summer can last a lifetime, but adults here, our years, they go by so fast, and faster. So obviously that triggers the fear of uncertainty for the future, and you fear for anything. You find a weird lump in your back that wasn't there the other day before, and say, "Oh my God, is this cancer or just a cyst?" I don't know. So uh, there are so many things that can trigger the fear response in your life, and I guess the trick is to try to control it. I mean, it's like remember you guys that scene in the movie Dune when Paul Atreides is asked to put his his hand on the box. There's like the gom jabbar test, and try to resist the pain, of putting the hand inside of the box. And I feel that is the thing, and fear is a base reaction. It's a primal reaction. Trying to live without fear, will be the ultimate accomplishment. And like, live without fear. It's something that apparently people who go through the near-death experience manage to accomplish. I mean, you go through that, the rest of your life is a piece of cake, apparently. So I don't know. I mean, it's something I would love to experience.
Well, I would say most of your fears, Miguel, are pretty grounded. Like they're logical, understandable things to have a fear of.
Not like moths.
Right.
Well,
For real. For real.
Well,
Now-
I'm also afraid of mice and rats. So
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man.
But again, mice and rats can hurt you. They can bite you. They can carry diseases. There's some rationale behind that fear. Lobo, you had a near-death experience. Did it change the way you experience life? What you're afraid of?
No.
No, not at all.
No. I did. No. It didn't.
That was a dead-end question.
Well, it's just I don't. Before it happened, I was very cynical about life and death in general.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, it's only gotten worse.
All
oh
right.
my God.
There's no
Was it a negative experience?
No, it wasn't a negative experience. No, it wasn't. It was an interesting experience. I can't say that it was negative or positive. It had shades of both to it.
Is it something you can get into, or is it something that we need like a full show to get into?
Well, Ro, I think we recorded it. I want to say it was 2 episodes.
Oh, okay. So we'll do that as a separate show at some point.
It was an interesting experience, to say the least. I'll tell you what. There was no Jesus. There was no baby Jesus. There was no light at the end of a tunnel. I didn't see any of my relatives. There was none of that.
Yeah, well, not everyone has that experience.
So,
Yeah.
And from having Shirley Black on, a lot of the people researching this stuff don't want people to know that's not part of all the experiences. They don't want people knowing there are negative experiences or that experiences that stand out from the norm.
Yeah.
yeah, I won't say that I don't think about it every single day, because I do. I replay the entire episode nearly every single day. And it's just, it poses more questions than it has answers.
Do you ever doubt the experience?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I think it may have just been all chemical reaction within my brain? At times. Do I doubt that it happened? No. Because even if it's chemical reactions going on inside the brain, we don't even know where consciousness comes from.
Right.
So, I mean, at that point, it's a moot point at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least in my experience.
Well, one could say that what's going on inside our brain is reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think what goes on inside our brain is more real than what we perceive every day.
yeah.
Because if you really want to think about it, the way we perceive the world is through our eyes. All our eyes are connections to our brain. Our brain is sorting out light.
Yeah.
That's all it's doing. And it's putting pieces together because of patterns that we understand.
Yep. And that's why I think sometimes when people come across some of these, I think what people might be coming across is energy their brain doesn't know how to process. So it just says monster.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
Co-creation.
or it says that must be a Bigfoot because that's something I've never encountered anything like before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suspect that it's, again, this is sort of touching on some other things, but I suspect that it's probably context dependent too. Not only your own personal context, but the context in which you see it. You know.
Yes.
So you encounter something in a forest, you're probably going to throw out ghost. You're probably going to throw out UFO/alien, but you might latch on to Dogman. You might latch on to Sasquatch. You might latch on to not downplaying your experience with your spirit guide Lobo. But, and by the same token, if you're in an old abandoned house, you're probably not going to latch on to alien. You're probably not going to latch on to Sasquatch. You might very well latch on to ghost and, graft that on there.
I like the term you used in your book, wilderness poltergeists.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I it's getting harder and harder for me to entertain these things as separate phenomena. It's getting really hard for me. The every day that I go down this path, it's seeming more and more like we're looking at multiple sides of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's one actor playing a bunch of different roles.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah.
I think that was Paul Kimball's concept. Is that it's literally one intelligence popping in with different masks on.
Not outside the realm of possibility.
No, no, not at all. I mean, how would we know? We take the things we perceive and we hold them to be self-evidently true. If you see something that looks like a spaceship, well, it makes sense to us that aliens could be coming to visit us, so it must be a spaceship. Or you have an abduction experience and they tell you, we come from Zeta Reticuli. So you come back and you say, they came from Zeta Reticuli. Why would you doubt it? Why would they tell you that if they didn't come from Zeta Reticuli?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I like the term that Jacques Vallée used, where he said they use sort of a meta logic. It's trying to disconnect your way of thinking so that you can think in ways you normally wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think the example he used is like you would walk around the corner and you bump into someone and the person says, "Do you know what time it is?" And you check your watch and you go, "It's 1:30," and they go, "No, it's 4:00," and they walk off. And that's kind of what this phenomena does to us.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I remember how Greg Bishop and God, forgot the name of these gentlemen who passed away last year. So they
Duensing,
yeah,
Bruce Duensing. Yeah.
thank you so much,
Yes.
Josh. So Bruce Duensing and Josh and Greg discussed the idea of fear as a carrier wave. The idea that maybe the phenomenon elicits this fear, not because they want to like feed upon our fear, as some kind of like a psychic vampire, as someone like Nick Redfern have suggested, but maybe because they want us to go to a different state of consciousness, because when you are afraid, your I don't know, your defenses are lowered, the typical defenses that you are always like having, when you go about your business, on a daily basis, you go on a street, and you're always, when you're an adult, you're always like checking your surroundings, in case there's some kind of funny business. But if there's something quite unexpected that you are not prepared to encounter, like, for example, I don't know, all of a sudden a clown appears, and rattling some kind of horn or something, and that's something totally unexpected. And not only you're afraid, but your barriers are lowered, and maybe in that state of mind, there's some kind of like dissolution of your preconceptions that is required for you to acquire new knowledge, and that's the way I feel about the phenomenon. Jacques Vallée talked about it as some kind of like a cultural thermostat, whereas I see it as a chaotic catalyst, that tries to like stir the pot, to try to come up with new ways of thinking and try to prepare the ground for new paradigms.
Yeah,
That's an excellent point, and it's been proven that theta and beta wave activity in the brain changes during intense fear, and if we can measure that using non-invasive devices, then it stands to reason that something else could at least detect those same things through a non-invasive method and perhaps even find some sort of application for them. Either a natural adaptation or a technological one. Sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. Earlier when I mentioned the spot in the graveyard that gives you that sense of foreboding, to me that's always been a gift, because that's I don't feel that it was actually what it felt like. I feel like it's a way to teach you to deal with your fear, because there's nothing there to be afraid of. And so, it's one of those things where you say, okay, I have this feeling that I should run. Instead, I'm going to walk through the area that's giving me that feeling slowly, and to see how much control you can have over your own, your own reactions to these things. And sometimes when I've done that, the feeling just goes away. It just dissipates.
Yeah, always do that.
Huh?
That's really
Always do that.
Right, exactly.
so chicken and the egg. Do intense events impact upon a geographical area or geographical location, or do certain geographical locations have this sort of energy that causes intense events to happen there? Are window areas, do UFOs, Sasquatch, and ghosts congregate around window areas, or do window areas, in other words, are things coming to the area, or is the area producing certain things? I guess is the real question.
Maybe a little of both.
I was going to say a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B.
I think depends.
Yeah, well, again, that theme of trying to be non-binary about these answers, that's a really good point.
And it could be that certain phenomena create areas like that. I mean, it could be completely environmental in some cases. Some place like Sedona or the Skinwalker Ranch or something like that that seems to have weird energy could be just a natural effect from the earth in some way, or some effect of our reality with another reality we don't understand. Or we could have certain very strong, powerful events that take place in certain places that then make those places powerful. You know, they open a doorway somewhere and make it into one of those places.
Yeah, it could be some kind of a artificial construct. You know, who knows if the site where the first atomic bomb test became, you know, all of a sudden a window area. You know.
Yeah.
Right.
Which would be sort of like a technological way of maybe thinning a barrier.
Yeah, well,
not one we should try.
But again, like, I wonder if perhaps you could go back and see that, you know, either on purpose or completely quote unquote coincidentally, atomic bomb sites were chosen because they were window areas. You know, either some sort of arcane force drawing them there, or, you know, in a very deliberate way, you know, being chosen for some sort of ritual significance. That's just something that I'm constantly wondering is which side of the equation we're seeing. And like you said, it's probably a little bit of a mix.
The thing I've noticed is that the graveyards that I've found to have activity in them are generally the older ones, which makes me wonder, was this graveyard put here because it was a sacred spot? Whereas nowadays, we don't go, okay, we need to put a new graveyard in. Where's our best sacred spot? We go, where do we have land we don't need?
Yeah, exactly. That's part of what made me think about this, Sarai, because I know that you mentioned that before.
And I don't know if that's the case, but it just makes me wonder, because it's only certain graveyards I've experienced stuff in. Other graveyards I've hung out at and gotten nothing, ever.
I think it has to do with the geographical location, personally.
Yeah, I don't think that, honestly, this might be a little bit controversial to some people, but I don't think that dead bodies in the ground is as strong a governing force in terms of creating a vibe for an area as people would like to think.
Probably true. I mean, if you're dead, you know, you have reports of all these people haunting their places of life. Why would they be hanging out at a graveyard?
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's sort of reinforced by the fact that you hear about a lot of UFO sightings have happened in graveyards. Very common to see Sasquatch sightings in graveyards as well.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I would probably say it's more common than people seeing UFOs in graveyards. So again, that sort of reinforces the idea that there's something about these areas that are chosen. You know, churches are chosen on existing sacred land. And that's where you happen to have a graveyard, or cemeteries are placed on existing sacred land. Sacred in some point in terms of being mystic.
Right.
See, now, the town that I live in was founded in 1670. So our town is 100 years older than the country itself, as far as being formed. We have a graveyard that was part of the original plot that was given to the original families by the King of England.
Jeez.
Not a whole lot goes on in that cemetery at all. We do have a witch buried there, but or someone who was claimed to have been a witch, which I find, considering my station in life, to be kind of upsetting that they still consider her to be a witch, but that's a different story altogether. But I will tell you that the other side of town where I grew up on, that one of the original families that was given property in the center of town decided to strike out, didn't care what the king said, and built a house and a farm on the other side of town before anybody else left the center of town. And there's some weird stuff that happens there. Really weird stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Have any examples?
My 79 Oldsmobile used to die while driving on certain roads. And I figured, it's just the Oldsmobile. Except my 84 Buick did that. My 91 Sentra did that. My 2000 Altima did that. I mean, it wasn't just my car. The radio would go out on cars. You'd see on one particular road, you'd be going down, you'd see another car coming straight at you because it was a single lane road. You had to get over into the dirt in order for another car to come. And the car would be coming barreling at you, and the lights would get right up to you, and then there'd be no crash, and then there'd be no lights behind you either.
Interesting.
Sounds of horses, sound of dogs when there's no, not normal dogs.
And I wonder what happened on that piece of land that might have caused it, or if it was just a natural location to draw that type of stuff in.
Could be. It could be an echo of the past as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, is it something in a specific area that's recording these events, or did something really powerful happen there that then turned it into an area that was picking up this stuff?
It could be both.
It could be. There's so many factors we don't understand about how our world works, how the reality around us works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll tell you what, the last day of me using, I went down to that area and tried to take my own life. I was drawn to that area. Evidently, it didn't work out.
Well, maybe it did. Maybe you were drawn there because you weren't going to be able to be successful.
Well, I'll tell you this. I went out on June 21st, 1995, and I sat on a rock, and the night before, the people that I was with had taken all the weapons out of my car, so there was nothing. I didn't have anything in my car, so I broke a Bud Ice bottle to slit my wrists. And no matter how far and hard I cut, I wouldn't bleed. It just wouldn't bleed. Now, in 95, in this area, it was really dry in June. It was like a dust bowl. And as I was sitting on the rock, I could smell rain all of a sudden, and the smell of lilac and lavender, or one or the other. It's always a mingled smell to me. Mm-hmm. And something said, get up, clean yourself off, and go and get help. And the voice that spoke was a voice that at once sounded familiar, and at the same time was a voice I had never heard before. And when I went to go and get help, the person that I went to their house, the minute I was in their company, then I started bleeding. But I didn't bleed before then.
Wow.
And what does that smell tell you, Joshua?
The rain smell?
Yeah.
Well, the rain smell is associated with a couple of things. I believe there's a compound that's released during rain that's called petrochlor.
Yep,
that's released
bacteria and.
But I mean, is it possible that there was some sort of ozone quality to it, or was it the rain? It was okay.
It was the rain, and it was mingled with the smell of those two flowers. And lilacs are far, far past at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, the thing that's more resonant with me is the floral smell. I mean, that's a very common, Blessed Virgin Mary odor. It's a very common positive odor in spiritual disciplines and in hauntings and such. The rain thing, I don't know. I really don't know.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad something intervened.
Something did.
Yeah, jeez.
I mean, whether it be your higher self or something completely external to you.
I'll tell you, I heard that voice again.
Really?
Yeah, 2.5 years ago when I was in the hospital.
Huh. What were you in the hospital for?
Near-death experience.
Oh. For some reason, I thought your near-death experience was related to your drug use.
No.
Oh, okay. And what did the voice tell you this time?
No one leaves here.
Well, that's comforting.
Well, I got out, didn't I?
He meant Earth.
Yeah, maybe.
Was it Strieber who talks about that in The Key, where they said saying like Earth is sort of a prison that we can't escape?
That's a real Gnostic thing, isn't it, Miguel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, but where I was what he was telling me I would never leave. It wasn't Earth itself, believe me.
What if the Earth we're like the Earth's food, and it's just digesting us, and it just keeps growing us and eating us?
I saw that great meme. Maybe you
Trees.
posted, Soraya. Yeah, or maybe it was Lobo.
Trees are serial killers.
Yeah, they're growing us for our carbon dioxide and then eating our bodies when we die.
Yep.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's apropos, isn't it?
And kind of true when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a perfect symbiotic relationship.
Yeah,
We need
except we eat them.
Well, they eat us eventually.
And the things that we eat them as well.
Huh. All right. I'm asking you guys what you guys are afraid of, and I don't know there's a whole lot that scares me anymore. I used to be
Credit card debt, right?
That's crippling.
I've eliminated a lot of that.
Nice.
I used to be afraid of spiders. I'm still not overly fond of them, but at this point it's more like I don't want to get bit. Especially since we tend to have wolf spiders.
Yeah.
And, they bite. So it's kind of like I just don't want to get bitten. It doesn't, if I see something that's not a wolf spider, it doesn't tend to freak me out so much. I've actually held them in my hands and stuff like that just to deal with getting over it.
Sure.
But I don't feel that that's really an irrational fear. I will sometimes jump if I see a snake. But again, it's more of I don't want to get bit. I kind of like snakes.
Right.
I actually had a dream last week or so that at the end of the dream I had gotten out of my car and there was a large snake crawling across the driveway. And I said, all right, I'm just going to wait and let that go. And as soon as I thought that, it kind of reared up, shot out a hood like a cobra, and latched onto my arm.
No.
Cool.
And I'm going, and I think I think I grabbed it by the head and I was trying to control it, and I'm thinking, okay, it's biting me. It looks like a cobra. What do I do now? And like I wasn't panicking, I wasn't freaking out. I'm like, do they even have anti-cobra venom in this part of the world? Because this isn't normal.
Well, this was a dream?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I didn't really get bit by a snake.
Yeah, well, the hood thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is this a dream? No. I'm speaking from beyond.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, no, yeah.
And in the dream, I'm thinking completely rationally about it, and I'm also thinking, how long does cobra venom take to work, and how deadly is it exactly?
It's one of those necrotic venoms, right? Like, is that one of the kinds where your body starts to fall apart, or is it?
No, that's rattlesnake.
Okay.
It's a neurotoxin, I believe.
Yeah, it like cripples you or whatever pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, people survive it, though. It's not like black mamba venom. People do survive cobra bites. It's not recommended, but...
Sure. I believe I read a story about some pop star in Malaysia who got bitten by a snake and kept performing until she died.
Yeah,
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, we always hear about those the religious types that are handling snakes.
Yeah. And sometimes get bit repeatedly and survive.
Sometimes, yeah, but you know what? We had somebody on the show that told us about it.
And?
Who was it? Some of them milk the snakes ahead of time.
Oh.
So
well, that makes sense.
It does. I mean, but still, there's that chance. You know what? I couldn't think of better people to get bit by snakes. And yes, I said that out loud.
But you know what? Some of them obviously don't milk them because people have died from it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, whereas some may, sure. I mean, it seems like a smart move. You're trying to up faith. You're it's a show a lot of times.
I can't remember who we were talking to, though. Oh, it's going to kill me now. Maybe it was Joe? Was it Joe Nolan? Ah, crap.
Well, Joshua, I don't know if you're the one who mentioned this or
Oh, go ahead and shoot.
I got something in my brain. I don't know where it came from, but it was the idea that a lot of like, say, faith healers, witch doctors, shamans, stuff like that, will sometimes use trickery to convince someone that they have power, thus actually giving them some power, some, whether you want to call it placebo power or actual power, because some level of belief is required.
Yeah, I think we talked about this. It's almost like a sort of
shock therapy.
Yeah, or I was thinking more along the lines of sort of a fake it till you make it sort of magical practice thing, The idea that if you act as if something has happened, it will happen, like the way that Crowley used to go out and eat caviar and drink champagne if he wanted money. But also, I mean, like I'm a big fan of really lounging in this gray area, like maybe the contactees actually had something happen to them and they had to perpetuate that myth and it got out of control. Similarly, maybe these faith healers have to use hucksterism to actually get people to buy in on a consciousness level to allow their body to, to do the healing itself.
And maybe a certain amount of belief is required before this stuff actually has any real effect.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
And I wanted to bring when we were dealing with fear, I wanted to bring this idea up too, of the concept of cosmic horror that Lovecraft did so well.
Oh, okay.
Wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Oh.
And it's the idea that we are insignificant compared to some things out there.
Dude, the universe does not care about us at all.
Right.
It doesn't.
I don't know if I agree.
I wouldn't necessarily agree. I would think we are the universe. However, I love the cosmic horror aspect, not just from a horror standpoint, but from the just trying to imagine something so far beyond us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My favorite
Dark Yuggoth on the rim.
Right. Lovecraft did a lot of good stories that didn't involve that cosmic horror, but they were never my favorites.
No, you know what? I don't know. The Cats of Ulthar was kind of lacking. It was a good story, but, there was no real cosmic horror.
No.
Not like, The Color Out of Space or The Shunned House or...
Eric Zahn.
Oh, I love that story. It's so good. It's one of my favorites. Rats in the Walls. That's like the base. Like, we suck.
But that again becomes an understandable fear. That fear that we're insignificant. That fear that there's something so big out there it could squash us like an ant and not even care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the grand scheme of things, is it really that far out of the realm of possibility?
No, certainly not. And the fact that he tapped into that when he did, so far ahead of his time, so far ahead of the general public being able to really grasp what he was talking about.
True. But you had other writers before him that were doing it.
True.
That he tapped from. The Horla, the story of the Horla by Maupassant was it could have been a Lovecraft story. It was just this impending doom. It was another form of cosmic horror. And you had, to a lesser extent, Dunsany. Dunsany's stories were more along the lines of, at the end, God is looking out for you. There was that whole idea, but it still tapped into a nerve. And Poe had his stories. It was mostly the nastiness of humanity in itself.
Yeah. He didn't do cosmic horror so much.
No, he didn't. But he did touch on the darker side of humanity.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is, the Cask of Amontillado is just... I would love to wall someone up just for being a prick, In essence, the whole story is of revenge, and he did it just because the dude was a prick.
Yeah. It's a different style of horror, though. It's a different style. That doesn't necessarily resonate fear.
True.
Well, it
But
still
it's the fear
implies
that's around you. You know, it could happen to anyone.
Right, yeah. Being walled up alive is definitely not something I'd like to try.
No.
there's still a level of human comprehensible order, though, in the Poe stories that you don't get in Lovecraft. You know, it's the same reason why conspiracy theories are so comforting, is because it's comforting to believe that, you know, the system, no matter how big and corrupt it is still in control, as opposed to, hey, nobody knows what's going on. It's chaos, you know?
Yeah. I agree completely.
Wait, nobody knows what's going on?
Well,
I fall somewhere in the middle of that spectrum of belief.
I fully believe that there are plenty of people who want to control what's going on and are more or less successful depending on what we're talking about.
I have no idea.
I haven't heard you guys deal with conspiracies much on Project Archivist.
Yeah, we generally don't.
Yeah. It's a rabbit hole type of a conversation a lot of times.
Well, it's a rabbit hole, and halfway down, there's a giant pile of rabbit droppings, and then there's like every 10 feet, there's this almost insurmountable pile of rabbit pellets.
Gee, that's very true. I mean, it's not that Ro and I don't find certain conspiracy theories intriguing, because we do. I mean, there are ones that Ro and I kick back and forth because they seem feasible in a tertiary sense. They seem feasible.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get past that first layer, not so much. We have covered certain. We did talk about the flat earthers. We have discussed that. Because the reasoning is because why? Why? It's round. Every other planet's round. Why would this not be?
Well, to me, the flat Earth thing is fascinating for the very fact that it shows as an intellectual exercise, what do we actually know versus what have we learned from other people? And we cannot, from what most of us anyway, some of us have been off the planet, have seen how it's a sphere and so on and so forth. But for those of us, like I don't think the three of us or the four of us have ever been off planet that we know of.
Not my physical body.
Exactly. So, we have to trust that what we're being told and what we're seeing is actually the truth. And if we go only by what we know, we can't necessarily prove the Earth is round.
Well, with the exception of people who have personally flown continuously in one direction,
Well, there's that.
Oh, sure.
The people that didn't fall off the ocean on a cruise liner, that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is from personal experience.
Yeah, the boat I was on went over the horizon. We didn't go.
Okay, well there you go. So you're good.
Yeah, I'm pretty good on that fact. I'm here mostly.
Mostly.
But yeah, you're right, Sarai. It's an interesting exercise in sort of the way that perception. Well, just how we perceive the world around us, because like some of the quote unquote anomalies that they point out are really interesting in a way. I'm not gonna go so far as to say compelling, but they're interesting in the way that they seem to reinforce something that is likely untrue. But it's interesting to see the way that it's interesting to see the way that a case was easily built for a flat Earth prior to the modern conception that it is round.
Yes. Yeah. As anything more than an exercise? No. All right. That's different. But as an exercise, it's interesting. And it's an exercise in how we perceive and what we believe and why.
Right.
And plus, the Earth is flat, damn it.
I think I have an easier time understanding the rationale behind a hollow Earth.
Oh, absolutely.
Ideal.
Absolutely.
As opposed to a flat Earth. I'm not saying that either one really holds a whole lot of water when you get down to like basic facts. But there are tunnels, there are subterranean areas where people have lived. We have proof of that. There are places all over the United States alone that have underground passageways. And, I mean, yes, we have that. That is a possibility. People have dug down into the earth to find places of refuge, to start areas to live in. But
yeah, if you're saying, hey, the earth is hollow, there's a black hole or another sun at the center, and there's a whole civilization living on the inside crust, okay, that's pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
But could there be even a civilization existing under the surface of the earth that we're unaware of? It's not that crazy of an idea. And they discovered just within the last couple of years that there's a whole ocean that we didn't know about under the surface of the earth.
Well, sort of. It's not really an ocean as we know it.
Right. But still, it's a large amount of water.
Yes, it's trapped within sedimentary rock. That's the problem. Yeah. It's not an ocean as we know it. But it is a ton of water that, by all rights, we had no idea was there. We had theory that it was there because of the amount of water that should be here, as opposed to what is already on the surface. I mean, we have those giant brine pools that are at the bottom of, trenches that shouldn't be there, that are an ocean within an ocean.
And what did they just find? A lake at the bottom of the Gulf? Was it the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's a brine pool.
Okay, all right. Yeah. All right, okay.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the news likes to kind of make it sound like it's more than it is.
Always.
Imagine that.
Yeah, right.
No,
while at the same time taking other stuff that really might have significance and trying to make it seem like it's less than it is.
Absolutely.
Yes. See,
because
the election.
Crap. Well, indeed.
See WikiLeaks. How about that?
Yeah.
No, I think that the hollow Earth thing holds some weight, not in terms of like the center of the Earth is literally hollow and that there's an eggshell-like structure, not that sort of idea of like an inner sun or anything. But I think the hollow Earth idea holds some weight simply because of the proliferation in folklore of just entities coming and existing from underground. William Michael Mott did a nice book about the prevalence of underground entities in world folklore, and I think that it's a motif that reappears time and again. Sasquatch lives underground, fairy mounds are underground. There are hidden alien bases underground. That sort of thing. But I think all that points to something. At the very least, it points to something that says a lot about us in a Jungian sort of way in terms of things inhabiting the subconscious, inhabiting the shadow self. At the very least, if not having some sort of literal objective truth to it.
Mm.
And it's not impossible to consider that there could be people living in extensive cave systems we haven't, who maybe never come up.
Well, you did have what were they, the Green Children?
Yeah, well, that's a
fascinating
great story. And no reason to doubt its veracity. Despite its age, it wasn't written. It wasn't told in a time period where there was a lot of nonsense being printed to sell newspapers, and it's so weird and out there, and doesn't seem to have a point to have been a fake story.
Well, and how mundane the entire affair ends. She just ends up living with people and ends up her skin color returns to normal. The sister, I believe, if that's correct.
Yeah, because the brother died.
Right.
And all they would eat was green beans. Right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or fruit or vegetables, yeah.
Yeah, they would peel them with their fingernails, I think. They had really long fingernails that they would peel them apart. And they they had come from a land of perpetual twilight.
Which sounds great. I'm all on board for that.
I know.
Yeah, me too.
Imagine every waking moment being the golden hour of sunset. That would be so awesome.
Yeah.
Would love that.
A lot of photographers in the Greenlands. realm. A lot of photography.
Now, what I am fascinated by is the idea that the moon might be hollow. Now, not necessarily because there's anyone there, but its mass does not equal its size. You know, as a full structure, we have, you know, we've dropped stuff onto it. It's rung like a bell. It behaves like a hollow object. In which case, you know, we already can't explain why it's there. Makes it even harder if it's hollow.
As if it were towed into the perfect orbit to promote life on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's no planet.
That's no moon. It's a space
That's no
station.
moon.
There was one scientist who said the best explanation for why the moon is where it is that it's a collective hallucination.
Explain that to the werewolves, then.
But I mean, it's one of those things that thoroughly fascinates me, and there may be a very mundane explanation to it, but who knows? I mean, a hollow moon is a really fascinating idea.
Yeah.
And we know it has to be at least somewhat hollow because it doesn't. Again, the mass doesn't match up, and it has. I think NASA actually has a map of like where the gravity and stuff is heavier as you circle the moon.
And like you said, it also rings when struck.
Yeah.
There was an explanation for the ringing, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was resonance because of the way let me remember this right.
Something about the makeup of the minerals, I wonder?
Yes, it had to do with that. But
now,
still,
was that thrown out there, or was that actually a provable hypothesis?
It's a theory. I don't know if it's a working theory. It's a theory. But again, it has to start somewhere.
Sure. And if I remember right, it was kind of like, wow, that made a big ringing noise when we hit it. Let's hit it harder.
Yes, let's launch, nuclear weapons at it, because that's an idea.
Well, if something this big made it ring that long, how can we make it ring longer?
Yeah, right. Sounds like the kid with on the pond. Well, if I could skip this stone across, let's launch this rocket. Oh wait, we're covered in water now.
I've always thought when we look at ancient sites and stuff that we're kind of like kids just playing in something we don't understand. Like the way we kind of forced our way into the Great Pyramid.
Or what we're doing to Gobekli Tepe right now.
Yeah. But at least that's being preserved to some degree.
We hope.
Yeah. But like we literally blasted our way into the Great Pyramid.
Because that's what you did then, son.
And it just seems to me like it's a bunch of kids going, well, how do we get in? Smash a door open.
Get a bigger hammer.
But doesn't in a lot of ways
the answer.
That sounds like such a sexier time to be an archaeologist, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Nowadays, you're just kind of root around.
I gotta get out my paintbrush and dust off the seal of the sarcophagus. Just gotta try to see if there's.
Could you imagine Carnarvon saying anything like that?
No, it'd be like, hey, it looks like there's a bloody door on this tube. Let's blow let's blow the sucker open.
Let's blow the sucker open.
I think that was a part of a mummy. Who cares?
Let's just burn them.
Where's the gold?
It is interesting that they're looking at new chambers in the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
And I'm nothing but amused that Haiwas is just kind of blowing it off. No. There's nothing there.
Yeah. Nothing to see here.
Not even in charge of it anymore. Still nothing to see there. Which makes you think, is he trying to hide something, or is he just so stuck in his beliefs that that's all he's ever going to believe?
Probably stuck.
Yeah.
I think he's probably stuck.
We know all there is to know. Go home now.
Yeah. Nothing to see here. Sorry, the park's closed.
Yeah, and you can't help but wonder what he hid and suppressed and sold off. Like, what sort of things could have possibly blown the lid off of our understanding of, the cultural narrative of Egypt that are just in the hands of some private collector or were deliberately suppressed during his time. I mean, he's one of the people that I think he's someone who a lot of people aren't aware of who he is or his name, but Hawass. But I think in terms of like the populace of the planet, but has had in his own way, in his own perverse, awful way, probably a greater impact on our perception of Egyptian history than we will ever know because of what he's done.
True. Yeah, because he doesn't have to tell us what he's doing.
Yeah.
They could have found very fascinating stuff, and he could just be like, "Nope, that must be wrong. Bury it."
Yeah,
who can we sell it? Or who can we sell it to?
Yeah, but at the same time, Hawass was necessary evil. As the head of the Department of Antiquities in Egypt, he was in charge of trying to preserve Egypt's historical legacy, and as a citizen of Mexico, I can understand that, I'm part of a country who was robbed of our
That's putting it
inheritance.
lightly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Take, for example, there's still this fight between the government of Mexico and the government of Austria. We've been demanding the return of Moctezuma's headdress. That is in I think the museum of Austria somewhere. And they've been denying that our right to have this historical heirloom returned. And Hawass was in a way very successful in trying to preserve very important pieces from escaping Egypt. We have to keep in mind that for more than 2 centuries, every European could go to Egypt and just take whatever they wanted. And with Hawass, he has been trying to have the bust of Nefertiti returned to Egypt, and the museum in I think it's in Berlin. They have kept denying the return of this effigy because they claim that it's so frail, so brittle that it couldn't possibly endure, the trouble. So I don't know. I sympathize obviously with you guys, and in thinking that Hawass has deterred and has been in an obstacle in trying to, get more answers about the true history of Egypt. But at the same time, I can sympathize. Egypt has no oil. Their major industry, as far as I'm aware, is tourism. So they live off, all these wonderful relics that their ancestors left thousands of years ago. And the Europeans just, they felt entitled to rob them of that richness for so many years Hawass is the natural consequence of that.
Anybody else seeing a pattern here? The Europeans took everything.
Well, yeah. All right. So I think this road has wandered far and wide tonight.
That's one way to put it.
So, Lobo, tell people about Project Archivist.
It's Project Archivist.
All right.
It's I don't even know how to describe the show. It's me and Ro. We have guests on. We have authors on. We talk about stuff. You can find us.
It's not all paranormal stuff either.
No, we tend to try to steer clear of a lot of the normal fare as far as paranormal is concerned. Mm-hmm. We try to touch on things that we try to look at things a little differently.
And you have some pretty damn funny shows out there.
We try. We have the yearly Fecal Matter show coming up.
And wasn't that not supposed to be a weekly thing? Or did you guys just
A
want to
weekly
do it once?
thing.
I mean,
It wasn't
a yearly thing.
It wasn't supposed to be an annual thing. That we had such an outcry after it was done the first time that we'll be doing it again. Chuck Brewer will be on with us for that one. He was on it the last time. And then we'll be having our annual cannibalism show in we do it during Thanksgiving because, why not?
Well, absolutely.
And we got some really good people lined up coming on this next week. Tomorrow we're going to be having somebody on that I think is going to be interesting to quite a few of our listeners. And
cool.
It's something that I've been looking at for years. It's something that Ro's been looking at for years. It has to do with some tiles that were left around with strange messages on them.
Ah.
But we're going to be talking to somebody about that tomorrow night, right around this time. But yeah, you can find us at projectarchivist.com. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play.
And you just set up a whole new website, right?
Yeah, we did. We're now through Podbean. We left our carrier. We had to. We didn't have a choice. I'm sure Ro's going to give me crap for saying that, but I don't care at this point. But Ro's done a lot of work behind the scenes. He's been busting his rear end to really get this thing moving. He's tough on himself a lot, but the dude does he pulls the plow. The guy. I'm supposedly the guy that comes on and makes people laugh, but Ro pulls the plow. He works
Like
hard
an
on the
ox.
website. What's that?
Like an ox.
He's a rather large individual.
I was giving him a hard time. We love Roger.
Ro's a good man. He's a good man. I'm honored to call him brother. He's a good man. But yeah, that's all I got.
Well, I'm glad we finally got you to join us.
Well, I'm honored to be on here. I thank you very much for the opportunity.
And at some point, we'll have you back, and we'll also have you back to talk about your near-death experience.
Oh, won't that be fun? I'm dying to tell you.
All right. Thanks, guys.